You ever notice how some guys walk into a room and women naturally gravitate toward them while other guys try everything, say all the right things, and still get overlooked? The weird part is, it's almost never about what you'd think. It's not about being taller, richer, or more conventionally attractive. There's something else happening that most men completely misunderstand, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I was at a dinner party a few years back watching this unfold in real time. There was this guy, let's call him Marcus, who spent the entire evening talking, not conversing, talking. He'd jump from topic to topic, throwing out observations about everything and everyone. He'd tell a woman her dress looked great, then immediately shift to some story about his job, then compliment her eyes, then talk about his car. It was constant noise. And the more he talked, the more I watched women's eyes glaze over. They'd politely excuse themselves to get drinks, suddenly remember they needed to talk to someone else, check their phones. By the end of the night, he looked confused about why nobody seemed interested in him. Then there was another guy at the same party who barely said much at all. He'd listen more than he'd speak. When he did say something, it landed differently. A woman would mention she was thinking about changing careers, and he wouldn't just say that's cool. He'd actually acknowledge something about how she was wrestling with the decision, how that took real courage. When someone mentioned their creative project, he wouldn't compliment the surface level result. He'd point out the thinking behind it, the originality. Women stayed in conversations with him. They actually leaned in closer, they asked him questions. The difference wasn't confidence or charisma or some magical technique. It was attention. Real attention. Here's what I think most guys get wrong about attraction. We're taught that attraction is built by impressing someone, by saying the right thing, by being entertaining or impressive or putting on a show. So we operate like we're constantly auditioning for a part we're not even sure we want. We treat every conversation like we need to prove something, demonstrate value, keep the energy high, but that's exactly backwards. When you're constantly trying to impress, you're actually communicating something very different than what you intend. You're saying that you don't trust your own worth. You're saying that who you actually are isn't enough, so you need to manufacture something better, and women feel that. They sense it in the way you rush through your words, the way you wait for her response like it's a grade on a test, the way you try to control the conversation's direction. The real power move is the opposite. It's stopping that cycle entirely. Think about the compliments that have actually stuck with you. Not the ones that felt nice in the moment, but the ones that genuinely changed how you saw yourself. Usually they're not the obvious ones. Someone telling you that you're attractive or that you did well at something you expected to do well at, those fade fast. But someone pointing out something specific that they actually noticed about you, something that required them to pay attention, something that touched on who you actually are, not just how you look, that stays, that matters. A woman experiences the exact same thing. She gets told she's pretty probably once a week minimum. Random guys tell her she has a nice smile, her outfit looks great, her hair looks good. It's background noise. It registers as the same generic comment every other man makes, which means her brain filters it out as meaningless. It's not because she doesn't like compliments. It's because she knows those compliments aren't about her, they're about what she looks like, and anyone with eyes can see what she looks like. But something different happens when you stop commenting on the surface and actually acknowledge something real. I'm not talking about fake deep observations. I'm talking about noticing actual things about how she moves through the world. Let me give you some concrete examples of what this actually looks like, because this is where most guys get confused. They think deep means complicated or philosophical or forced. It doesn't. There's a massive difference between walking up to a woman and saying, "You have beautiful eyes," and actually noticing that when she listens to someone talk, she genuinely focuses on them. That's real, that's observable, that's something that required you to pay attention to her behavior, not just her appearance. So instead of the generic line, you might say, "I noticed you actually listen when people talk. Most people don't do that." You see how that's different? You're not commenting on her looks. You're commenting on her character. You're proving that you actually watched her, not just looked at her. Or here's another one. A lot of women put real thought into what they wear, how they present themselves, but most guys comment on the result, not the intent. That outfit looks great is fine, but everyone says that. Instead, notice the actual choices she made. Maybe she mixed styles in a way that shouldn't work but does. Maybe she has a specific aesthetic you can actually articulate. Instead of generic praise, you might say, "I like the way you put this together." There's something purposeful about how you pick your pieces. Suddenly you're not just seeing her, you're showing that you understand her. The energy someone brings into a space is real too. Some people walk in and lighten the mood without even trying, not because they're performing or being fake, but because there's something genuinely calm or warm about them. Most guys completely miss this. But if you notice it and point it out, you're touching on something she might not even consciously realize about herself. When you're around, things feel easier, or there's a realness to the way you carry yourself that most people lose at some point. These are observations that go straight to her core identity. And here's something most guys never think about. The way a woman's mind works is infinitely more interesting than how she looks, but almost nobody ever compliments her on it. A guy will admire a woman's physical appearance because it's easy and visible and requires zero insight, but to actually acknowledge the way she thinks, the way she processes problems, the unique perspective she brings to conversations, that requires you to be present and actually listening. When you do it, you stand out completely because you're one of maybe 3 people in her entire life who actually does this. If she's explaining her approach to something at work, or how she handled a difficult situation, or even just the way she sees a movie or book differently than everyone else, the moment you acknowledge that original thinking, something shifts. She relaxes a little. She's not performing for you. You're not performing for her. You're actually connecting on something real. The thing that most men don't realize is that this kind of attention is actually rarer than physical attraction. Look, most men can see a beautiful woman. It takes no effort. But to actually pay attention to someone, to notice the small things, to understand what drives them, to see past the surface version of who she is into who she actually is, that's uncommon. And women feel the difference. When you operate this way, you're not trying to create attraction through effort or performance or manipulation. You're creating it through genuine recognition. You're essentially saying, without even using these words, I see you, the real you, not the version you show everyone, not the version you think you're supposed to be. I see who you actually are, and that's what I'm responding to. And here's the part that actually matters. When a woman feels genuinely seen, not just looked at, something shifts in her. Her defenses drop. She doesn't feel like she needs to perform or manage your impression of her. She can actually be herself. And when you're one of the few people who allows her to do that, when you're one of the few people who actually notices and acknowledges the real parts of her, you don't just create attraction. You create something deeper. You create a feeling of safety and recognition that she's probably been craving without even realizing it. The execution of this matters, though. You can't deliver these observations like you're reading from a script. You can't say them with desperate energy, waiting for her to validate you with a thank you. You can't rush through them or pile them on top of each other like you're trying to win points. The power is in the delivery. When you notice something real about someone, the most powerful way to share it is with calm, quiet conviction. You look her in the eye. You say what you noticed, clearly and directly, without apology or explanation. And then you let it sit. You don't fill the silence. You don't add extra commentary to soften it or make it safer. You let your words just exist there, giving her space to actually feel what you said. That silence is where the magic happens. Because in that moment, she's not thinking about how to respond or how to impress you back. She's just taking in what you said. She's feeling what it means to be noticed. She's experiencing that rare sensation of being actually seen. When you can stay comfortable in that silence, when you don't get nervous and start talking to fill the space, you're also communicating something important. You're showing that you spoke because you noticed something real, not because you were trying to manipulate the conversation or gain her approval. You're not fishing for validation. You're just sharing an observation. That kind of confidence, that kind of ease with quiet, that's attractive on a completely different level than physical appearance. Here's what I've noticed from watching this play out repeatedly. The men who create the strongest attraction are rarely the ones who talk the most or say the most impressive things. They're the ones who talk less and mean more. They're the ones who listen longer and observe more carefully. They're the ones who give compliments that are so specific and so clearly rooted in genuine attention that it's obvious they actually see the person in front of them. You can't fake this. You can't memorize a formula and expect it to work the same way every time, because it's not about the specific words, it's about whether you actually mean them. If you're standing there thinking, okay, now I compliment her mind or now I mention her energy, she's going to feel that. She's going to feel that you're following some kind of system instead of actually engaging with her as a person. The real skill is just learning to pay attention to the actual things that make someone interesting. What does she do or think that's different from everyone else? What qualities does she have that most people overlook? How does she show up in the world? What impact does she actually have on the people around her? These are the things worth noticing. And when you notice them, share them simply and directly. The men who seem to have this mysterious quality, who seem to create attraction naturally without trying, they're not doing anything complicated. They're just present. They're paying attention. They're acknowledging what they actually see instead of performing some version of what they think they should say. And that's enough. It's more than enough. It's actually everything.